Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm sharing my intermediate runway class. Alright guys, if you have not already seen the basic runway class video, make sure you go check that out after you watch this one. And that first video will show you how to work on your posture on the runway, how to walk in heels. We'll show you hand placement, head placement, how to learn how to do your walk by walking on tape and in between sticks, and how to balance a book on your head as you're walking. In this class, we're going to talk a little bit about posing on the runway. So when you are out on the runway, you're going to get to the end of the runway, and that is where you'll be doing your poses. Generally, you're not going to stop in the middle. Sometimes you'll do a turn there, but your poses are going to be done for the most part at the end of the runway. And this is a really cool experience down here because this is where the photographers are going to be able to capture some pictures too, which is going to be great for you because these are pictures that you'll be able to use in your portfolio as well. So when you get down to the end of the runway, you're going to do your poses. You have a kind of set amount of time that you're going to be down there. So kind of think to yourself how many poses you think you need to fill the time that you have at the end of the runway. You don't want to pose so quickly that the photographers are not able to capture photos and the people can't fully enjoy and see what it is that you're wearing and what you're displaying at the end of the runway. Remember, when you're on the runway, it isn't about you, it's about what you're wearing on the runway. So make sure that that's what you're always showcasing, especially when you're posing at the end of the runway. You don't want to make these fast movements. Nice, slow, fluid movements. And if you're wearing like a jacket or something like that, make sure you use that in your posing as well at the end of the runway. Next thing we need to talk about is facial expressions for different runway walks. So there are various types of runway walks depending on what you're wearing. If you're wearing something fun or maybe like some beach wear or high fashion or just a regular fashion show, they all have kind of a different feel and a different look from the models. Make sure that you know what the facial expressions are that are expected of you at the walk that you're doing, at the show that you're walking in, because that's going to be really important. You're not going to want a big giant smile if you're doing a high fashion walk, or you're not going to want to look super serious if you're doing a fun swimsuit show. It just depends. And so if you're not really sure, make sure you ask somebody. Either if you don't want to ask the director, then you can see what other models are doing. But if you feel like you can ask, it's best to ask the director what it is that they're expecting, because that way you can bring your best game to the runway. Next, let's talk about high fashion. This one is completely different walk than a regular fashion show. In a high fashion is very almost robotic like movements. There's no arm movements here, and there's no hip movements. So there's no big stylish moves. This is very, very strict, rigid movements as you're moving down the runway. It's more of a statement as you're moving down the runway. Very serious look here, and you're not really looking around or anything like that. As few movements as you can make. You're literally just moving your legs to the end of the runway. There's no posing once you get to the end of the runway in a high fashion show, and then you just turn and walk right back. So huge difference from all of the other fashion shows. The high fashion show is very different and a lot more fluid in the movements, and a lot more solid. Next, we want to talk about how to walk in a show, and paying attention to the other models. So when you're actually in a show, You're going to be working obviously with other models, and it's important to know the timing of when you're supposed to be out there and how long before you go, because it really will mess things up if you get out there too late, or you start walking too late or too early. Then we have too many models on the runway, and then there's the issue of passing somebody else on the runway. So you really have to pay very close attention. Don't get distracted. Don't get lost in the fun of all of it. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on with the other models, so that you know what you need to be doing. Do you need to be, next in the queue? Do you need to be at the back of the runway? When should you take off? When should you turn? Make sure that you also realize when you're passing another model on the runway, who has the right of way and who needs to move, which is the model that's coming back to the back is the model that always has to kind of give way. The right of way is always given to the model who's walking out and to the end of the runway. Next is how to walk in a group and staying in sync with them. So this is obviously something that must be practiced, but in many cases, when you're walking in a group on stage, you're going to be staggered for the most part. So that's one of the things that you need to pay attention to, because you have to make sure that essentially you stay in the same place as you move down the runway. So you're going to be forming the same shape that you started in the back towards the front. So if you've got one model in front and two behind that model, and then they'll be off to the side so that everyone can see all three at once. As you walk down the runway, you don't want to catch up with the model that's in front or fall behind the model that you're supposed to be right next to. So that's something that is going to be practiced, and you just really need to pay attention to the other models that you're on the runway with that are in your group, so that you can stay in sync with them. It's something that does require a lot of focus and, of course, some practice. At the end of a show, there is a finale, and usually the designer does come out as well. And so one model will come out with the designer, and then everybody comes out and is applauding. Now, when you're clapping at the end, you're going to come through and basically give everyone one last glance. So there's going to be a little bit quicker movement, and you're going to be walking as you're clapping, which, sometimes can be a little bit tricky if you've never done this, but this is a nice light clap, kind of known as like a golf clap. So this isn't like a big, loud, crazy party hooting and hollering type clapping. This is going to be more of a reserved type clapping, like, oh yay, this is good work, and then the crowd will join you as well, and then you all stay on the stage together with the designer until they've taken their bow, and once the designer has cleared the stage, then the models will follow suit in behind the designer as well. So these are some tips for you to start working on and to kind of know that you need to do for this intermediate runway class. We've got an advanced class coming up. Make sure, if you haven't already subscribe to the channel, set those notifications so that when our next video comes out, you will be alerted so that you can watch it. Make sure to give me a like on this video. If you have any questions, leave me those questions down below in the comments. And I hope to see you in a show real soon.